The international community has reacted with surprise to the news that Russia is to pull out the main part of its forces from Syria. Although President Vladimir Putin offered no withdrawal deadline, he did say Russian troops would start coming home within hours. The reason he gave was that the intervention was in accordance with the situation on the ground and that objectives had been achieved. Thanks to the participation of Russian military groupings, the Syrian armed forces and the patriotic forces in Syria have been able to achieve a fundamental turnaround in the fight against international terrorism. Russia's military involvement has turned the tide of war in Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's favour after months of gains by rebel fighters. Moscow isn't abandoning its ally altogether. Its forces will remain at a seaport and airbase in Latakia province. The UN has cautiously welcomed the pullout.
When we see forces withdrawing, it means war is being taken a different step. So that's good. This has been made possible thanks to the good cooperation now between the US and Russia.
The current fragile truce in Syria has seen a rise in anti-government rallies in several cities. It's 5 years now since the bloody conflict, which has cost the lives of more than 250,000 people and triggered a major refugee crisis in Europe, began. UN-sponsored talks are due to resume today in Geneva, aimed at creating a roadmap to end the conflict in Syria. But after day one, the UN Syria envoy warned that provocative rhetoric on both sides could derail efforts. Speaking to Euronews after Monday's session, Bashar al-Jafari, who heads the Syrian government delegation, accused the opposition of setting preconditions. Our dialogue is based on the fact there are no preconditions. We're already negotiating with many opposition groups which are fragmented and don't have a unified programme. Preconditions signify a blockage of dialogue and the desire for this new round of talks to fail, like the last time. Both sides, who are still a long way from holding face-to-face talks, have been told there is no plan B, just a return to war.
We're here in Geneva for one thing. We want to make the Syrian lives and the Syrian people's lives better. We thank very much the United Nations for their role. I know they're doing everything they can for peace and to have better life for the Syrian. And we, as a Syrian opposition from the HNC, our boss are the millions who are in need to stop this and to have a full transitional government body for the Syrian people.
Euronews' reporter in Geneva says,
ahead
ahead of the meeting between the UN's emissary and the Syrian opposition, several questions remain unanswered over these new talks and whether they will result in a political accord that will open the door towards the end of the war in Syria. Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu has visited some of those injured in Sunday night's deadly bomb attack in Ankara. 37 people were killed and 15 others remain in a critical condition. No group has claimed responsibility, but the Prime Minister has said evidence points to the banned PKK separatist group. Turkey's president says he intends to redefine terrorism to include those who support such acts, not to restrict it to the person holding the gun or the bomb. Protesters took to the streets in Ankara on Monday night, showing their anger towards a government which has failed to protect them from this latest attack. Sunday's blast was the second suicide bombing in a month in the heart of the capital. It's raised fears of a dangerous new phase in the government's war with Kurdish militants, bringing more violence fueled by the wars in Syria and Iraq.
North Korea says it will conduct a nuclear warhead test soon. According to the country's state news agency, Pyongyang will also launch ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads. South Korea's defense ministry said there was no indications of activities at the North's nuclear test site or at its long-range rocket station. It said that North Korea maintains it is ready to conduct nuclear tests. The South Korean president says
북한이 이렇게
North Korea will lead itself to self-destruction if it does not change and continues to make excessive provocations and confrontation with the international community. The North conducted a nuclear test in January and launched a long-range rocket last month. Sanctions were tightened in response. Pyongyang has issued hostile statements almost daily since then.
It's Super Tuesday again, but this time 5 US states will be holding nomination contests, and it's Florida which is the biggest prize. The Republican candidate who wins here will take all 99 delegates, but it's a state which has an entrenched Latino community built on immigrants of Cuban descent. Donald Trump made an error because in the state of Florida and the whole country, 90% of the hard work is done by the Latinos. But controversial Donald Trump is leading the Republican polls in Florida despite opposition in some quarters to his aggressive anti-immigration rhetoric. According to some pundits, the Trump campaign machine has revolutionized the way people think about voting.
You would think that with 2 Cuban senators in the GOP race, they would be a natural fit for the Cuban community in Florida, but that's not the way it's breaking. People are not so much voting for somebody because of their ethnicity or because of their gender, but because of, what they stand for.
Even so, Democrat frontrunner Hillary Clinton can probably rely on strong Latino support.
In today's primary, Florida seems to be locked up by both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. But in a general election matchup between these two, this perennial swing state could tilt dramatically in Clinton's favor. A strong showing with Latino voters could very well decide the election. Stefan Grobe, Euronews, Miami Beach, Florida.
After a successful launch, the joint European-Russian mission to sniff out signs of life on Mars has left Earth's orbit and is heading for the Red Planet. The craft, part of the Exomars program, blasted off from Kazakhstan. It's carrying a probe whose aim is to study gases that previous Mars missions have detected in the planet's atmosphere. The spectators weren't the only ones to be thrilled. It's hoped that one day, perhaps in 20 or 30 years, human flights to the planet may be possible. Euronews is following the team from the European Space Agency and Roscosmos as they journey to Mars. Our correspondent reports from Kazakhstan.
There's an incredible sense of excitement amongst the scientists here after that successful launch. For many of them, this is the first time that they've built an instrument and sent it to Mars. Of course, there are many hurdles to overcome. The instruments have to prove that they're working now they're in space, and they've got a 7-month journey to the Red Planet before the science can really begin and they can really start to look for signs of life. Jeremy Wilkes here in Baikonur in Kazakhstan for Euronews.